What's up everyone, Darkscream here, and before I begin with my review, I'm going to apologize to anyone that was waiting for it almost half a year ago. Caught up by several distractions, most of them were unexpected, but that's life for you. Anyways, regarding this review, it actually won a vote between this and Tekken Blade, which surprised the hell out of me. Mostly because Gundam X is one of those more obscure, less talked about Gundam shows by the mainstream anime audience who are familiar with Gundam but they aren't too into it. Hell, I occasionally play a video game called Gundam Versus, and there's a lot of different mobile suits with a lot of different representation from a variety of shows. But Gundam X isn't one of them, DLC or otherwise. But anyways, you guys asked for it, so let's get started with my review. After War Gundam X is a 39-episode real robot mecha anime series as part of the Gundam franchise that aired around 1996. It is the 7th Gundam series to air, and it's an alternate universe from the mainline Universal Century series. X's continuity is known as the After War Century, and it's called this because a war between Earth and space colonies pretty much jacked over the planet pretty damn hard. See, the colonists, known as the Space Revolutionary Army in the show, as a last-ditch effort against the United Nations of Earth, decided to drop multiple, and I mean multiple large colonies onto the Earth's atmosphere. And if you're a Gundam fan, you should already know how devastating one colony drop would be. Now imagine dozens of them hitting the Earth like a meteor shower. And the series actually begins 15 years later, or AW15. Our protagonist, Garrett Rand, attempts to rescue a new type by the name of Tifa Adil from a vulture ship. After he successfully saves her, she guides him to an old UNE facility where he acquires himself a mobile suit, the GX-9900, or Gundam X. A mobile suit with a moon-powered laser weapon that can pretty much kill and destroy anything in its path. Later on, Garrett takes the GX and teams up with the Vulture crew known as the Freedom that he rescued Tifa from. And I say rescued in air quotes, he actually didn't rescue him. It was all a misunderstanding. It turns out the Freedom was trying to save Tifa. And he embarks on a journey with them to find and save other new types from being exploited as tools of another impending war between the UNE and SRA. Now, I said before, this show is 39 episodes. It was planned to be actually 10 episodes extra, basically 49 to 50, a standard for Gundam shows prior. But I think schedule conflicts messed up the show, and as a result, they didn't really cancel it. They just had to compact it in the last 10 episodes. Now, it didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel out of place. I actually think it was paced just fine and it still had a solid conclusion, unlike other shows that had the unfortunate fate of being bum rushed. And the beginning of the show, it starts off as a pretty standard, post-apocalyptic adventure. And you would think me describing it being post-apocalyptic, it would be a dark show, kind of like Zeta Gundam or Thunderbolt. But it does have occasional dark moments here and there, but tonally, this is one of the more lighthearted and optimistic Gundam series I've ever seen. And maybe just post-apocalyptic anime in general. It doesn't look like Mad Max all the fucking time like Fissa North Star. There's still civilizations. They say they're in the recovery period, but they actually recovered pretty fast in 15 years. Like, you see full-blown cities with cars and boats and what looks like clean water in most areas. I mean, the only thing I've noticed is that if they do have a base known as the New Orleans base, and it's actually taking place in New Orleans, then I can tell you for sure New Orleans is fucked up because all I saw was nothing but desert in that area. And sure, you have to deal with marauders in mobile suits raiding land and crops, nuclear reactors that could go off any second, and they do explain that the beginning of the AW century to be the most abysmal, but if someone told me if I had to choose which post-apocalyptic world I want to live in, I'd definitely pick AW15 from this show. So if you're expecting a darker Gundam show like Zeta or Thunderbolt, then you might be disappointed. Now I, on the other hand, well, I didn't know really what to expect because this show doesn't get talked about a lot, and when they do gush the hell out of this show. I actually still love the hell out of Gundam X a lot. As I said before, plot starts out pretty much standard adventure, go from point A to point B, stay in the point B for a while for a story arc, meet a new type, etc. You might meet a new type dolphin. Yeah, they have new type dolphins. But then later on, the show does go back to the aforementioned space war and how the cast of the Freedom Crew have to deal with preventing another catastrophic war. We finally get to see some members of the SRA, and it just slowly becomes more of a traditional Gundam show again, with the anti-war message being, well, better presented from the perspective of the people who had to experience the immediate consequences of it more clearly. This becomes the motivation and driving force for my favorite character in the show, Jamil Neat. He is the captain of the Freedom. Now, I apologize, but I'm probably going to use more Gundam terminology and analogies from the Universal Century to get my point across. But Jamil is kind of like a what if Amuro Ray ended up being a Quattro Bagina-esque mentor role to our main protagonist, Garrett Ron, as opposed to Char? Now, besides just looking cool with the fancy blue coat and shades, he had the most going for him with his backstory. He was a new type that fought on the side of the UNE, and he didn't like the idea of being used as a tool, so he even ended up developing cockpit phobia as a result, hence why he's scavenging the Earth to save other new types from similar fate. Now, as for our protagonist, Garrett, I don't have any real issues with him, except for that one time where he screwed up and ran away, but that's like most Gundam protagonists, and even some mecha protagonists in general. But other than that, he's like an optimistic, energetic, he's not whiny nor preachy. He wasn't a character that got on my nerves, unlike some of the other protagonists. And in fact, I would just say the whole Freedom Crew was just a fun and likable cast. Like Tex, the doctor, even the mechanic, who is just a child that's younger than Garrett. Yeah, no real issues with the characters here. Before I move on to the technical aspects of the show, there is one thing I want to talk about that I love. I love the fact that Garrett's GX mobile suit has this joystick looking controller that acts as an activation key to the mobile suit. And I love this because it's not stupid simple for anyone to just hijack his mobile suit, which is a huge head-banging deal that happens a lot just in Zeta Gundam alone. Somebody could just run into the cockpit, press a few buttons, activate the damn thing, take off from the hangar. Mobile suits get stolen so damn much in the Universal Century. Like I said, in Zeta Gundam, it just makes me facepalm a lot. So glad they have a feature like that in Gundam X. Now, as most Gundam shows, this was done by Studio Sunrise. Directed by Shinji Takamatsu, character designs by Nobuyushi Nishimura, who is also the character designer of the Zonyaenders video game, so that's cool. And the mecha designers were from Angelic Layers' Junya Ishikagi and Armor Trooper Votom's Kunio Okawa. Being a Gundam TV show from the 90s, it obviously looks pretty close to Wing. Pretty standard Gundam fanfare, you know, some decent mobile suit battles, nothing super high quality or spectacular, mostly because it's a TV production with more episodes than 26. Nothing horrendous, but I wouldn't say anything that was like must-see for the Gundam fights alone. It's a good thing that the stories and characters were elevating up a little bit more. Character designs, you know, they look great. They're not Bishi like in Gundam Wing. Garrett looks pretty cool. I obviously mentioned Jamil. I think he looks like a badass. They also have this one female character named Tonya who kind of reminds me of Mahoshi with the blonde hair and the tan skin. And the main villains, the Frost brothers, well, Shagir Frost has this weird futurist 1950s greaser look with the frilly coat. He looks alright. Oba, on the other hand, just kind of looks really flamboyantly weird, and those cowboy boots don't match with the rest of his clothes. You'll see when I put a pic up here. Now, as for the mobile suit designs, they really are trying to parrot off of the Universal Century. Like, there's a whole lot of nods to the original 1979 TV series, right down to the final battle between the Earth and the SRA. Jamil's mobile suit and Lancero's mobile suit, it just looks like Gundam versus Young, and it even ends very similarly. So yeah, they were clearly trying to like kind of sort of be like the Universal Sentry mobile suits, but not really. Like for example, Karis's mobile suit, the Vertigo, is basically a Cubile. The standard SRA Genis, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is like a more medieval Zaku, and there's like another version of the Genis where it has bull horns. I thought that was awesome. And the UNE's Daughters mobile suits kind of look like the GMs, but with alien faces. And yeah, there are plenty of other Gundams outside of the X. You got Roby's Leopard, which is a heavy weapons ground type mobile suit with lots of missiles and chain guns, which is actually pretty surprising he has a mobile suit like that. You would think the pretty boy womanizer would have something a little more elegant, but no, he has the hard heavy hitting stuff. Interesting. But my favorite Gundam in the show is the Airmaster, and I believe it's upgrade form. I forgot what it's called. I think it was the Airmaster Burst. And I like it just because it transforms into a fighter jet, and I just have a small bias towards mecha that have a transformation mode. Yes, that includes most robots and transformers, the Valkyries and Macross, etc., etc. The main Gundam, the Gundam X, well, it's obviously called that because it's got panels on its back and it's an X shape, obvious. And those panels are used to charge up its satellite cannon, which it gets from absorbing the light from the moon. Yeah, the moon is a very heavy motif in this show. In fact, the first episode is called Is the Moon Out? And then later on, he does get the Double X, which looks a little bit cooler, and I think its headpiece is supposed to be X-shaped because it's got like little legs sticking out where its face is. It kind of looks like it's trying to grow a beard or something. But the Double X is also pretty damn cool. Now, the last couple Gundams I want to talk about belong to the Frost Brothers, the antagonists, and since they're the bad guys, they get the most evil-looking Gundam shows in the show, with their darker color palettes and creepy weapons. Like, the Versico's got these long demon hands, and the Ashtaron's mobile suit has like these scissor claws. But I would really like a Gunpla of the GX sometime in the future, maybe. Yeah, the horrors of war being exploited as merch. Yeah, I like to collect Gunpla. I don't care. Fuck it. Alright, so we move on to talking about the sound, mostly the voice acting and the music. And here's another problem. This show is only subtitled. There's no English dub of it. I think we were supposed to have one. Now, I don't have a strong enough credible source. I just got this from the trivia page of TV Tropes. So take it with a grain of salt when I say that we might have gotten an English dub of Gundam X. See, what happened was, after the success of Wing on Toonami, they wanted to localize Gundam X as well as Turn A Gundam, because those two shows probably were released around the same time Wing was. But Bandai fought against it in favor of pushing the Universal Sentry series instead, so that's why we got the original series, 8th MS Team, and 0080. Now, if that story is true, I actually understand that decision. Universal Sentry is king, it's the core franchise. I love the UC, don't get me wrong. But man, I still would have loved to see this show get dubbed. And hell, if it did air on Toonami, it would have gotten more of a mainstream recognition as well. The overall soundtrack is pretty good. It was composed by Yasuo Higuchi. I'm actually not familiar with a whole lot of his work. But he did compose some really beautiful music, especially the premonition music, which has this like heavenly choir at the beginning. Both of the openings are really good. I think I prefer the first one, Dreams, over the second one. It just has more blood pumping into it. It does get you hyped up when watching the show. But one thing I want to talk about the soundtrack is the ending credits song that plays during the first third of the series run. The song's called The Human Touch, and it was done by the late Warren Weeby. And I love this song. It is super damn cheesy. It feels like one of those songs that plays like during the middle of the credits of an ending of a Disney movie or something. I love it that much. And I was actually disappointed when they switched to a Japanese cover later on. But the song did come back appropriately during the final episode, which did give this show a good, strong finish. Overall, After War Gundam X is my favorite 90s alternate universe Gundam series for sure. I do love G Gundam, but that's more ironic enjoyment than anything. I just love G Gundam because it's so cheesy and bad. But X, I actually legit love for its characters, a really decent love plot between Garrett and Tifa, one of the better anti-war messages Gundam has, though they still sell merch of it sometimes. And, you know, like I said, a better post-apocalyptic world. I mean, I would live there for sure. Fuck, I wouldn't mind being a marauder in a mobile suit. I strongly recommend this show to almost any mecha anime fan, whether they are familiar with Gundam or not, because it's an alternate universe, therefore you don't need any prior knowledge in order to get into this particular continuity. No pretext or anything. Currently, the series is legally available for DVD thanks to Nozomi Entertainment, who has also re-released other classics such as Irresponsible Captain Tyler and Martian Successor Nadesco, two other anime I have reviewed in the past and, you know, gave high scores and recommend those too. Okay guys, I really hope that this review was worth the wait. I'm not sure if I'm going to do any more requests. I don't know if I'm going to do any more, like, well, I am going to do reviews in the future, but I don't think I'm going to, like, tell you what I'm going to review next until I'm legit for sure I want to talk about this. So it's going to come on as a surprise. I might put some updates on Twitter, but whenever I'm close, whenever I feel confident that I'm going to review my next project. But yeah, I'm sorry it took so long. Most shows that go past 26 episodes does take a lot of time, and I've been pretty damn busy. Plus, I'm trying to get ready for convention stuff. And plus, I've been watching other Gundam shows, like Zeta and Char's Counterattack. But I don't want to announce something, but then just have you wait almost forever for it. Or have you wait for nothing and not actually get around to watching or reviewing the show. Because obviously, I've promised some things, and I'm very terrible at keeping my promises, even more so than ever. So, whatever anime I'm going to review next, it's just going to be a surprise. And if you do watch me for my reviews, just I hope you stay subscribed to that regardless. But I suggest you also follow me on Twitter, Darkscream217, and I might put a tweet saying, hey, I just finished watching this show and I'm going to set up a review for that one. And that's probably how I'm going to keep you guys up to date on future anime projects, because I do want to get back to talking about anime more and more. There's even a discussion that Deck Crash and he threw up on the air, and that's something I want to talk about. But yeah, that's all I got. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you actually do give Gundam X a watch. And with that, this is Darkscream signing out.